Welcome to the Regeneration Podcast, friends. It was actually Michael's. I was actually willing to sign on. We were going to start recording at 9. I'm glad you're early because I re-upped our Zoom account and they have changes, of course. And I thought like you could show up and I could be fiddling with this thing for a while, but I figured it out. I signed on and I figured I'd start talking. Whenever you joined it, I could cut it out or keep it, but I'm glad you're here. What's new, my friend? Welcome to our fans too. It's been a while since we've talked to each other. Been a while since we've produced a
Yeah, we didn't abandon you.
I
We're not
told you that
we're
my
not having a spat.
no, it was my and Edwin wouldn't mind me sharing this. My uh son-in-law, Doug Crowder's father, Edwin, lives in Hilton Head House, South Carolina. Quite a golfer, quite a thinker. We're going to have him on the podcast. He's a fan, but he called me the other week, or maybe when I was in Michigan, and it seemed kind of urgent. But he just said, like, what's going on? What's going on? He's from South Africa, wondering if maybe we had a spat, or wondering if we are continuing her Deep Six the project or something like that. Again, I can't wait to have Edwin on. He's got maybe sometime in October or something. So you were saying, what's going on in your life, Mike?
I've just been busy. I mean, so crazy busy.
So crazy too.
What did I do this week? I harvested honey. Uh, Harvested honey, started making mead. I'm curing bacon. Bonnie took the two youngest boys out west to see our kids out there. So, and I've just been, and I plus doing, work related like editing and stuff like this. Oh, and I got to tell you this.
Yeah.
I was one of our former guests, Sebastian Morello.
Wow.
He wrote a book called Hunting, Hiking, and Holiness.
People loved that. Loved him as a guest.
And after he read Mythologies of the Wild of God, he said, "Well, Michael's the perfect guy to write it forward for his book." So we're working on that this week.
Oh, wow. That's a nice rapprochement because he was an amazing human being, an amazing speaker, so smart. And yet, even towards the end of the podcast, he was so gentlemanly about it. But I think we could see that we were going to have some pretty big differences on the nature of, for me, one would be the history of the divine feminine in Europe. He has it coming from a priest class. Oh, and I think it did there. But again, for me in America, the feminine divine is coming from the people. It's coming from the people, and it's radical.
Yeah.
But I can learn so much from that guy.
Yeah. Plus, he's a good guy, And
Oh, yeah.
One of the things he wrote, so he sent me the updated version of his manuscript like a week and a half ago. And he told me that he had just returned from South Africa where he was hunting on some game reserve, and how he and his friends they would be cooking in the evening. And in South Africa, of course, it's winter now. They would be cooking, and he'd read them my poems on hunting.
Oh, wow.
But here they go. But I'm telling my wife, I said, yeah, so here's my friend here. He's in this exotic locale doing some hunting, on the veldt. And Bonnie's like, well, what'd you write back? I said, I went to Walmart, so that.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
I wonder how he does. Oh, again, a little bit of travel. Like, so Sebastian flew to South Africa. I flew over your domain to go visit my 90-year-old father in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And it's a long drive, and we had to be there on a certain day, his birthday, but we flew, and every time we had a few couple of delays, but just air travel, these people who still use it all the time, it's the most dehumanizing, risky gauntlet, and that when we didn't miss our transfers or our connections, you just breathe a sigh of relief. You know that at any moment, the whole thing can go so irremediably south. And so then I think of Sebastian, like, I might be visiting our daughter and son-in-law this November in South Carolina. And I was kind of scouting out airfares there. But two things. One is the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Michael, because nobody would disagree with what I said about travel, I think. I've got stepbrothers there. My mom died when she was 52. My dad remarried back in his hometown. Joanne, nicest person in the world, love her. Um, and it's so beautiful up there. You know, it's unspoiled nature. Um, and yet Ironwood makes all of its money basically now on weed stores. People come from Minnesota.
Really?
They're five and they look like
Oh, your dad's in
Alice's.
Ironwood. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And so, but I was talking to my stepbrothers is that like here in upstate New York, there is still a very depressed economy. You know, we need to separate from
What's the matter?
downstate.
You didn't watch the Democratic National Convention?
No, this is going to be wild. Yeah,
They told you how great the economy was the whole time,
yeah,
but they're going to
but
fix it on day one.
yeah, yeah. No, but I see that these little villages around me could see a comeback, you know, with the scandal of COVID. You know, some people started working from home, but in the UP, you just don't, apart from the weed stores, you don't see it. There's a nice little kind of hippie culture that's moved in, but it shows the old miner culture and the hippie culture. But my my stepbrothers were saying, uh, you know, the politics, the miners just want the mine to reopen again. That's one part, but also just a few miles south, and I didn't know this, beaches in the water, and there's this beautiful root beer looking water up there because of tannins or something,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, but the tourists are drawn to kind of bluer water, like most people who've never seen Lake Michigan or Lake Huron. You know, I can't say it enough, they just be blown away that it looks like the Mediterranean, you know. But then you go a few hours north to Lake Superior and it's pristine waters for the most part, but it looks exactly like root beer, you know. And if you think of the Rock Candy Mountain song, you know, it has its own beauty. But the other thing is leeches and things like that. So
Right.
they just can't attract the tourist, you know. And I guess I hadn't thought of that, you know. It can just be
Interesting.
so
Yeah.
different.
Well, Lake Superior, man,
It's wild up there.
it is. It's the most intense lake I've ever seen.
Yeah, yeah. The whole thing
Isn't
has a
it? It's
personality. Yeah,
intimidating.
it's intimidating.
It is. It's been a long time since I've been there, but wow, in
A
fact,
little
where I
town
used
on
to
Lake Superior. Go
go
ahead. Yeah.
was on Whitefish Point,
Okay, I know it.
which is right, it's however many miles off of where the Edmund Fitzgerald went down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. The sense I get, and Ironwood is, you know, miles away from Lake Superior, but Grand Marais is a small little town, kind of due north of Sault Ste. Marie. And in those Lake Superior small towns or Manistee, you just get a feeling that any moment, almost like these horrible hurricanes you see in the South Pacific or, you know,
Yeah.
tsunamis, you just get a sense that the lake could take everybody in a heartbeat.
You do. That's the thing. It's
Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, yes, sir, to that lake because I don't want to
Yeah.
piss it off. You know what I mean?
No, no, right, right, right. And the posters that are still fascinating to me since I was a child are these huge map posters that just show the places and the amount of lives lost in the sea wrecks. Now that's true on all the Great Lakes,
But
and in some
especially
ways,
Lake
Superior.
Superior.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Lake Superior is so deep too.
yeah, yeah. They say the percentages. There's something on our Hulu account, one of these documentaries that they feature called The Great Lakes, and I know I'll get the stats wrong, horribly wrong, but you know the single percentage that Lake Superior has vis-a-vis the totality of the Great Lakes is remarkable. And then, you know, obviously, even as a percentage of the world's total freshwater supply, Lake Superior has a story to tell.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, it's flexing its muscles for the future, saying, you need me and the whole Great Lakes region, you know.
Mhm. For sure.
Yeah. So what did you think of a Kennedy's? You were talking about Kamala and, you know, the last time, the Kennedy thing yesterday, did you see it?
Yes, I did.
It's pretty heavy, man.
I was
And,
blown away.
yeah,
I thought it was probably,
it was
I
heavy.
think in my lifetime, it's the most powerful speech I've ever seen.
I told my son, you know, and again, I think the lesson is going to be don't get, you know, I'm big on scale. Don't get drawn into national politics. And I tend not to care, you know, in upstate New York, you can vote third party because your electoral college votes are always going to the Dems. So apart from some prudent things I do, I'm definitely, you know, like we train ourselves in spirituality. I'm a trained localist. But you know, I pay attention. The whole Trump phenomenon is interesting. It's really funny. It's mythological. It's archetypal. But this seeing that speech, I tuned into it. My body tuned into it. And in the middle of it, I looked over at my son and I said, "Oh my God, this could be a drug, but this is fairly exciting." And then you see Trump tweet moments later saying, what would you think of RFK being the CIA director, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
a huge portion of the culture that listens to Joe Rogan. I don't really. I like him. I wish I did. Tucker Carlson. I like so much of what he says. I don't listen to that many podcasts. But that whole world must have vibrated, almost like seismic.
Well, watching Twitter or X after that, it was I would say it was a vibe shift.
Yeah,
I mean, and plus at the right the day after the DNC ended, talk about taking the wind out of their sails.
holy
Um,
cow.
but the thing is with his speech, I mean, there was nothing I disagreed with.
No, no.
No, I mean, big pharma, big ag, evil, yes. Collusion between corporate America and the government to suppress
Yeah,
free
yeah,
speech and other things.
yeah. He was so
Check.
clear.
Yeah,
So
all the
clear.
stuff about health and children. Check, right?
Yeah. Just
And
bringing
being
chronic
anti-war.
disease. Yeah.
I mean, check. I mean, who I can't believe, and I know, and you know a lot of people too,
Yeah.
who are, I would call them, left-leaning Catholics or even right-leaning Catholics. Mostly it's left-leaning Catholics, who you would think would be anti-war. At least they used to be. But now they're all, we have to defeat Putin, right?
Yeah.
And I can't, and I just, it's insane. It's absurd.
It's
And I've been
totally
anti-war
100% absurd. Yeah.
for my entire life, and and that's just, I mean, gosh, what is it? They say every 90 days the deficit goes up another $1 trillion because
Yeah.
we're funneling money into Ukraine and wherever else.
Yep. He took a
Crazy.
stab at the monetary dynamics, the geopolitics meets monetary. He mentioned BRICS and so forth. I think like Guido would be able to unpack that better. But who cares? I mean, he's gets so much right. And again, I can proudly say I've never voted for Trump, but I never hide the fact that in the past two elections, I preferred Trump over the opponent, but I thought they were both be disasters. But again, last night to say how it kind of drew me is to think, holy cow, even just to say in New York, it still won't matter, but to say yes to that, what he was saying.
Well, and plus that message of unity, right? They're
Yeah.
calling it the unity party.
When he mentioned the team of rivals, right?
Mhm.
That's all of a sudden I felt myself shiver. He goes, this is what they're doing. Kennedy was eloquent. We agree on those main points you mentioned, Michael. But he said there's so many areas we vociferously and strongly disagree. But like Lincoln, with getting the people who disagree with you most strongly close to you so you can talk to them. I don't know. That could be again, we could find out. I'm going to be honest. We could find out, and I might wake up in a couple of days and say that was all a pipe dream. And probably it will be. Will he? Trump tweeted, how about RFK for CIA director? My youngest son lives at home. We've talked about it. My oldest son, Peter, he immediately goes, Dad, that's not going to happen. That these things are too powerful, too powerful. And yet still I wonder. They both have seen, they both had a tryout for this through the Kennedy assassination for Robert and Trump's assassination and his first term. They see how this game is played better than most. And if they join forces on that, they might be able to start untangling some
Well,
threads. I
well,
don't
it's
know.
the interesting thing is they I'm as far as I'm concerned, they were trying to take Trump out of the last month.
Yeah,
It was not just some random kid, right?
I don't think it was, and we'll
I
see.
know.
Yeah,
And of course, RFK Jr. has been saying those are the same guys who took out his father and his uncle, right?
yeah.
But now what are they going to do? Are they going to they can't take them down now
I
because
don't know.
everybody will know that that's exactly what it was. And I think they realize they're fucked, you know?
Well, you're saying they're kind of in a no going back moment now. My son Peter, and I'm between you and him, would say no, they're really crafty. And Guido would probably say, I'm not so sure I agree with him, but Guido would say they're 5 steps ahead of us
You would,
even
yeah.
here.
But
We should call
that's
Guido now in
probably true.
Italy.
They always have a great contingent plan,
Yeah, yeah.
but I don't know if they planned on this one.
I don't know.
And the other thing is, I mean,
Oh, I should have thought to call Guido. That would have been fun.
yeah,
We could
it
do
would be.
another one this week and just bring him on.
We should
Yeah.
talk. But I was one of the things that was occurring to me, with I mean, there's so many things. Say Trump won and gives RFK a cabinet post or something. I mean, there are so many jobs he could do, like
Yeah, yeah,
attorney general.
yeah.
That'd be pretty.
Well, when he articulated his desire, so they could say CIA director, that's wild. But even if he was, director of health and human services, the goal to clean up the totally corrupt CDC, the totally corrupt FDA, that's a real likelihood too. It's all, again, I don't know what to think. I'm very dialed in as our
Well, and
listeners.
the other thing that what came out this week, when they started dropping those rumors that he was going to endorse Trump, would be when they sent out what's her name? What's her first name? Shanahan,
Yeah,
Nicole Shanahan, and they sent her out, kind of doing reconnaissance,
yeah.
But I was so impressed by her.
I haven't seen her speak. It's just
I
a
thought
name
she
I
was
know.
super impressive, and
And
she
what's
was
her role supposed to be?
well, actually, what she was saying, at least that's what I heard, is that she didn't. If Trump were to win, she would not want a cabinet post because she's got her sights set on governor of California,
Okay.
which would be that poor state.
And who is she again, though? Like,
I can't remember which was there money from Google or
and
something
what was she
like
doing
that.
on behalf of Trump or Bob Kennedy in the last
She
week?
was
I'm
she was
confessing total
she was his
ignorance.
VP.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But she really,
That's
I
why
was
I've heard her
really
name.
impressed by her. But here's the thing, right? And this is what I like about this moment is well, at least well, you can see this because over the last few years, you've seen this one. There's a place where you could say there are a kind of Democrat and a kind of Republican, just to be simplified,
Mhm.
that are drawn together into a coalition. But you see that the great example is Tucker Carlson and his friendship with Glenn Greenwald,
Yeah, right.
right? Which those two guys probably disagree on at least half of the issues, but they're in dialogue and they're
And Michael
united.
Tracy
They're
and that whole
united.
circle of Greenwald, these Jimmy Dore, comedians, Dave Smith, who I listened to driving from Minneapolis to Ironwood. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's really good. He's really
Yeah,
good.
he's really, and that's the thing is,
Yeah.
all those guys, and I would say Jimmy Dore is a great example. Guys of our generation who grew up as probably, I don't know if he's Catholic or not, but Catholic Democrats, that's what we grew up as. But and still have those kinds of values, for the working class and peace and stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
And but they've been calling out bullshit for years on the corporate capture of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Or the corporate or deep state or whatever you want to call it. And if you go back to when we were kids, for instance, there was not that kind of vitriol between Democrats and Republicans as you see now.
Right.
Which is and I don't even think it was that bad. Well, it probably got bad after Watergate, maybe.
It's gotten worse and worse over issues that are more and more trivial and insignificant, or just cosplay, like the whole trans phenomenon. It's just stuff offered to us. It's meat. That's why, just one quick segue, not a segue, a little detour is, I can't say enough about Guido's book, The Ideology of Tyranny, because he's saying that so many of these issues, like the trans phenomenon, they're conservative, the far left woke agenda. And that's where one of the most interesting breakways that could happen is there was this great Spanish, I won't mention his name because I haven't asked his permission, but a real leader in the Basque separation, a great Spanish, kind of influenced by Marx, but great. He's from Greece. He's written on limit so profoundly. And I gave him Guido's book, and he was a Foucault scholar, this guy. And he read the beginning of Guido's book and said, like, Guido knew more about Foucault than I, ever could. But the point being that when Guido unpacked the whole story of like the postmodern woke phenomenon, he shows that, this is where the imperial, war-loving, protect the elites philosophy, which is very much the same thing as the trans phenomenon, which doesn't infect their communities, but does for the lower class. He goes, it's a class issue, folks.
Absolutely.
And it's a very conservative issue. It's a class issue. And,
I want to,
we
I
might
don't
start
know if I
seeing
would-
that. Yeah.
class might be too broad a term because it's not really, well, like, I guess what I would say is it's class as far as it seems to, especially in places like Boston or in academia, that class of people tends to, whether they know it or not, reflect the opinions of the 1%.
100%. That's what he's
Because,
saying.
I don't know if it's like, what is it? Is it Stockholm syndrome or what?
But the duplicity of it is in that class. This is where I often tell the story of my daughter, Lucy, who's taught in a very upscale high school in the Rochester area, now teaches at one, you'd say, middle to lower middle class. No. Lower middle class to like lower. And that in the upscale one, everybody, all the teachers wanted students who identified as animals. They wanted that in their classroom, but it just wasn't there. So the teachers who all lived in the upscale places wanted that stuff and it wasn't there, but they raised their families very conservatively. They stay together in their marriages. The sociologist Charles Murray, traced this phenomenon. They give their kids, Tara Thiek would be great on this. They give their kids really good books with good illustrations, right?
Right.
And my wife, who teaches piano to this demographic around where we live, like the one where my daughter teaches, could see too, in the lower class, people are watching more TV. That's shorthand. It's more, but so many in those lower class ones, the teachers are more conservative. So they don't want it in their classrooms, but it's there because the kids in the lower class are watching TV and they see it. So they're saying, I'm a gerbil. They're saying I'm a mute, even though I can speak. And those are real stories, right? So that's another kind of unpacking that this is a class issue that's very real for the way people are living right now. It's
Well,
not
and
innocuous. It's doing a lot of damage.
and and the thing is, I mean, I think about this a lot. That's if you know the history of propaganda,
Super A's.
propaganda works on the middle managers, and from the middle managers, it disseminates into the culture. And the middle managers are the professors and teachers to a great degree.
Yeah.
And this is there. I mean, I've been in education for so long, but most teachers are fucking stupid because they just are. Because and I always would rag on colleagues because they'd always talk all day about critical thinking, and I go, you are not teaching critical thinking.
Yeah.
At all. You're propagandizing. If you were teaching critical thinking, the students would thank you for it. But but they don't. They just don't teach critical. They don't teach critical thinking. They don't teach critical reading.
No.
Which you notice, you could, and it's interesting. I would say that part of the shift over the last generation or two in English studies, in teaching, teaching of English,
An area you know well.
Well, I do, but it's the emphasis is on rhetoric, not on reading or deciphering. So students have a really difficult time, usually, unpacking a dense text, even when it's not so dense. Because they don't have, no one's ever given them the tools to do that. All they do is they learn a set of arguments. Whether it's for feminism or whatever, right? They learn that set of arguments and they just apply that to everything, which is probably what happened is it happened when critical theory invaded the English department, and that's all it became. It was no longer, and the other side of that is, it's much more valuable, but the kind of, and I don't want to use this word really, but the reactive or reactionary response from the others, the great books kind of people, and I'm kind of a great
Right.
guy,
Yeah.
but the Western tradition, which I also support the Western tradition.
Yeah.
But the thing there's got to be a way to do that where you don't have to be an asshole about it,
No, but
you
it's
know?
solely analogous to what we were just talking about in politics, isn't it? You know, the elites kind of play a certain just plasticine, caricature image of the right versus left. So you have Alan Bloom versus like some Pomo, and they're missing the whole important thing. And again, that's kind of what Guido's book skewers. It's what other people,
Yeah.
to be honest, have skewered so well, Christopher Lasch and so forth. But
And I think but I think the other part of it is that um like I remember was it this year? Was this year? January, where I gave that lecture in Hillsdale.
yeah,
And I remember I told you how impressed I was
yeah,
with the students and the faculty and the whole vibe, right? And that's the second time I gave a lecture at Hillsdale. And but the thing is, before I went to there the first time and I gave a lecture on sociology and metaphysical poetry, but my impression of Hillsdale, even though I know people who teach there, was basically,
Jason Peters teaches there.
yeah.
Yeah.
But my impression was that it was basically going to be, like a 1980s Reaganite Republican vibe, right?
Right.
Which is not what it is at all. I mean,
No,
actually,
you could get that
I saw
impression though.
more critical thinking going on there, and more, you know, to take a word from the Democratic Party, joy
Yeah.
in the human project,
I think because of
in literature.
podcasting, they probably couldn't stay in that bubble if they wanted to, right? Because young people just won't put up with it. That's the other thing. Kennedy knew, that's why I said that younger demographic that listens to podcasts, it all just quaked yesterday when Kennedy was talking. But another thing about academia though is that, and I don't mean this as just throwing names around, but it's possible that there's no cure for stupidity, right? That's my hero, Stephen Vizinci, said there is no cure. And so formal education might just solidify it, and the PhD makes it more dangerous. But the more they've left-brained higher education, the hard workers will get their PhD eventually. Hard workers will. But that can be equated with more left-brainism of all, the whole project, not to mention the liberal arts that have been totally left-brain. And so you do have that. Then these people get there and they're not very intelligent. They might be stupid. And then they really get interested in the power game and the professionalization of things, right?
That's
And
it.
yep, it's a huge problem.
It is a huge problem, which is why I wrote, I don't know, maybe a month ago on my Substack
That was a
about,
pretty good takedown we did of academia in the last 5 minutes. Yeah.
well, it's
Yeah.
it's
Heavy. It's heavy.
but when I wrote this thing on Substack about hedge schools,
Yeah.
because it's what I'm doing, my kind of, because right now I got 3 left counting today. This course I'm doing on Christian romanticism.
How's that going?
That's great. We're
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
actually today we're doing Rilke, the
Wow.
divine elegies, which is pretty. I mean, it's been great. I mean, it's everything's been fun. Of
Yeah.
course, I always think I'm having more fun than everybody else, because once I get 3 cups of coffee in me and a book, I can talk.
Yeah. I've
Uh,
had coffee this morning, our listeners could tell.
well, yeah. But that gives me hope that there are these, and Michael Millerman, if you know him,
I do not.
the Millerman School. I don't. Yeah, I think he does a lot of more formal philosophy stuff.
Oh, okay.
But there are
Should
and
have
Mark
him on.
Shaw's got his school of myth out there, right?
Yeah.
So people are taking it rogue,
Oh, the
which,
Jordan Peterson thing in its own way. It's not really my
yeah.
cup of tea. Sure.
But I think, but the thing is, I would like to see a lot more of those kinds of
Me
things
too.
out there,
Yeah.
because, well, like, you might take a course from me, you might take a course from Jordan Peterson. I mean, Jordan Peterson, when you hear him talking about his field, he is brilliant.
Oh, he
When
is
he's talking about
totally.
psychology,
Yeah.
it's when he gets into other stuff, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
settle, stay in your lane, Jordy. But but
Yeah. He drank the Kool-Aid on
when he
just a
talks
few
about
things.
theology, that's, I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever. But when he's talking about psychology, I
Oh,
think
yeah.
the guy is so wise and so
Yeah.
insightful.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's what college is like. It's supposed to be like, right? You get exposed to different people with different kinds of ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you can figure it out for yourself. But and I had these experiences in college. I had a couple really great mentors who I probably, I don't think I had political opinions at the time, but I think I would probably disagree with them on many things today, but they didn't care. I didn't care
Yeah.
either, right? What was important is they were helping me find the tools to discover wisdom.
Yeah.
That's what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And I see less and less of that going on. I mean, I've been around colleges and universities for 25 more years, and you see almost zero of that.
I think I've told you how depleted, and it's really, I'm going to be honest at the beginning, it was my fault, but I went to Catholic schools. I went to a good suburban high school, Penfield High School. I went to college at a great liberal arts college at the time, still kind of is, and that's where I've taught and did campus ministry. And so most of it's my fault because I might have mentioned that my roommates calculated that I went to less than like 1/3 of my classes total at college, but I'm sure I was ADD, so it's nobody's fault. But I didn't even know of the world of ideas. Possibly, I had one good friend who occasionally would open like a magazine, it was National Review, and he would mention something about politics. But all I knew is the fact that I could get an A on social studies tests or get an A on a history paper. And so I just had no idea.
Yeah.
So when I did, and again, I'm going to blame 90% of myself, but also you would have thought, when I spent all that time in school, even if I wasn't paying attention, yeah, we would have hoped one would have been exposed to more of them. I don't think I would have been totally deaf to them. They just weren't there.
Yeah.
They weren't
Yeah.
there at all. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
My fault. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it's just, what are we doing this for?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I always think, for myself, I always had an idea in my head of
Mhm.
what education should be. Well, plus I was spoiled by being a Waldorf teacher. There's the other part,
Yeah.
but even Waldorf schools are not Waldorf schools anymore. They've been infected by the woke virus as well.
Oh, totally.
It's saddening.
Yeah.
But from Rudolf Steiner's model for education was so inspiring to me
Uh-huh.
that kind of gave, because this whole project for Steiner and other people, and I'm sure Guido would agree, was about giving people the tools to become more human.
Right.
The arts of being human, the liberal arts, right? The arts that will free you,
Right.
right? And I still hold to that. I mean, I still think that.
Yeah, it's right there. It's right there in front of people. It's no further than the end of their nose. The foot into this whole world where you just start saying, I'm free. I'm free. I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. That whole thing called spirituality is, again, this incarnational approach that daily just start engaging with the real. We've heard it all before. But yeah, that's what it's all supposed to be about. That's where I was writing a letter with a campus minister yesterday. It was more about me than him. But I was reading something. Oh, this is a pretty good segue. It was Bishop Barron. It was Bishop Barron. It came out of the Eucharistic Congress. That's a whole world into itself. I keep on forgetting I have this job, that's knee deep into the church. And so I run the Office of Liturgy. And so the Eucharistic Congress was something I followed pretty closely. And what it was, there was, on purpose, there was music done there that was trying to hit a tone, right? And there's some new music coming out, and I don't know enough about it. I should. But Bishop Barron was saying one of the things that came out of the Eucharistic Congress was a move towards the supernatural. That Bishop Barron said you couldn't deny it. We're moving back towards the supernatural. And his language in this article, and I forget the name of the article, but people could find it, I'm sure. But it was like angels and saints. No, saints are great. They're very different from angels. But it kind of saddened me because it didn't, how we were talking about these vectors of kind of the left and the right, that like the tertium quid, the one needful thing is always missing.
Yeah.
It seemed like Bishop Barron, who I thought was better than this, was just pointing to that kind of conservative reaction again. So we have to buy all this jargon about words like the holy or reverent, which denote nothing in modern parlance. And I think of Coventry Patmore again, that the supernatural is supernaturally natural, right? And that's where Martin Shaw is so good, that I'm worried we're going to go back to talking about, oh my God, the Holy Spirit. Which brand of mayonnaise am I going to buy? I'm going to ask the Holy Spirit. I'm having a real Teresa of Avila moment here. All this ways that the Catholics have trained themselves to talk, when what that does is keep you away from the real. And I read the rest of the article by Bishop Barron, and I don't see anything that would lead me to believe he wasn't kind of taking us back in that direction. He's too nuanced and he's too good. He's brighter than I am. He wasn't
Well,
trying to get caught up in the rad trad versus the libs debate. But it's almost like he did, because he reduced it to the supernatural versus like 1970s Catholicism, which in one way of telling the story, we're still coming out of. It's a too simplistic of a tale, as you would know.
well, that's actually good to go back to Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah.
That's one of the things in that speech where he talked about prayer
Yeah.
and how, doing in a way doing God's will,
You're so smart to bring that up. That was stunning.
and
Yeah.
I was and and the guy you saw, he was on the verge of tears
Yeah.
talking about what we've been doing to children and how
Yeah.
we have to stop it, right?
Mhm.
And you think it's a even people here's we were talking about left and right coming together. Naomi Wolf. I mean, you don't get any more left than being Al Gore's campaign manager, but who has been vilified by the left for her stances on what's been going on with health over the last, especially 5 years.
Right.
But she's another one, right? Who is on that kind of misty border, but that's showing a
And
kind
it's
of a
mushrooming.
coalition.
Yes, it's mushrooming. We're naming names that people know, but
But they're all talking about this as a spiritual battle,
yeah.
and they're and you would never expect Naomi Wolf to do a series on Genesis,
Mhm.
which she's been doing, I think, for about a year. I don't watch them. I mean, I don't have time to watch everybody's 2-hour podcast, but she's been doing this, and this is not something I would expect from your typical lefty, right?
Yeah.
Or political person, secular humanist, right?
Mhm.
But they're all invoking that. And Bobby Kennedy is. You see Tulsi Gabbard, she's another one, right? Who's
Mhm.
also invoking the language of the spirit
Mhm.
to talk about our times and to talk,
Yeah.
which is good, right? I mean, we could be, who knows, there, this could be like the darkness before the dawn. There could be a new kind of American transcendentalism that comes out of all this.
Who would be fun to talk to about that would be our friend John Michael Greer. He
Yeah.
loved our podcast, and he lost his wife this year and all that, but I wonder, so I'm thinking he would be somebody who would think this could be something, and he's playing with that, I brought it up several times, the idea of the change figure, Trump marching upstream and leaving all the institutions, but he himself could be a buffoon. But he still sees us. He can tell that story of Trump while he still sees us in a period of civilizational kind of Spenglerian decline. And how would you rebut what you would think John Michael Greer would say, that this is an
No, I
epiphenomenon?
see it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it is civilizational decline.
It's
But
a Caesar type thing still, don't you think? Does anything about this
no, I think we're in
Kennedy thing?
I think but the thing is, it's like the alternative modernity. There's another stream going alongside the mainstream, right?
Mhm.
That sometimes bubbles up, sometimes doesn't. But I really think right now we're in uh, a dark ages.
Mhm.
And I think, out of the dark ages came the Renaissance,
Sure.
or came first the medieval Renaissance, but then the Renaissance proper.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying those things are all cyclical necessarily, but where there's what did Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda,
Uh-huh.
what he said about
I met some cool people who
what he
just
said
say
about
I have to
Detroit.
read him.
He came to Detroit one time, and somebody said, "What do you think of Detroit, uh, Guru?" And he said, "Hey," and he said,
This is gonna be
It
great.
takes a great like a powerful light to make so dark a shadow.
Wow. Wow.
You know, so I think we're going through that.
Could be, could be. And to almost to go back to John Michael Greer, um, is that he's the one who told me, and I think I'm oversimplifying it, is even during the decline of Rome, we could say we're in the decline of this kind of empire thing. It's not like you have to wait. The Dark Ages weren't bad. Things started getting better for the poor pretty quick. They literally did go just kind of kill the rich people and take their money. And then yeah, the food systems were disrupted. But this, I was thinking of this yesterday during Kennedy's talk again, which keeps coming back. He's talking about, chronic disease and the focus on horrible food. There's something analogous that must have happened in the Roman Empire with food, because he said people started growing like backyard vegetables and the lower class became healthier, and
Yep.
kind of embracing life more, even if they had less food. Like we might worry about having less money, so we can't buy as many Big Macs and, have as many channels on Hulu. But, so they could call that decline in the metrics, just like when they talk about progress. This is where I disagree
Yeah.
with Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, and it's a foundational problem, unless he's corrected it in his thinking, is he thinks again that if you took somebody who is living at the subsistence level and like beat him on the head and dragged him in and put him in a factory making $5 an hour, he sees that as an economic gain because he begins with mathematics, not with the reality. He's a scientist, he's a left-brainer.
Well,
Go
and,
ahead.
and yeah, and that's John Michael is big on de-industrialization and degrowth and stuff like that, which I don't know how that all works, but I think he's right in his book, Our Retro Future. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Where, eventually the toys are gonna lose their sheen, and we're gonna be thrown back on having to have skills and knowledge.
Yeah.
And one of the things he points to, and I think this is really wise, and I see this a lot because I live out here in the middle of no place, is that he points to if you go to like Civil War reenactments or revolutionary reenactments, or here, just a couple miles away from here, there's what do they call it? I can't remember what it's called, but they have frontier days, so they have like demonstrations, like
Chelsea.
guys making arrowheads out of mica or whatever, or showing you how to shear sheep or tan hides or whatever they're doing. And they're actually making, a lot of them make bows, like bows and arrows from trees.
Yeah.
But these guys, and blacksmiths, they have all these people with actual skills who can actually do things.
Yeah.
And there's a whole subculture, and John Michael talks about this in that book, out there that can do all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Right? That when it all goes down, you're going to need those people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not just when it all goes down, but and the thing is, we're connected with a lot of these people out here, and they all can do things. And it's like it's a subculture of self-sufficiency, and you probably have with
Oh, we
raw
have it
milk
around
there.
us for sure.
So with us with raw milk, we're not doing it now, but our friends are, so we get raw
Mhm.
milk from them, and people get vegetables from us, or however it works out. And it's not just barter, but it's cooperation,
Mhm.
right? And it's a hopeful sign.
Yeah. And I think that, go ahead.
But
Yeah.
it's the anti-archons. It's the anti corporate model for everything. It's the
Mhm.
anti-BlackRock, right?
Mhm.
So and I would call that well, actually, after I get off with you, I'm gonna shoot up to the Amish store because it's donut day.
We have Amish donuts right up the street.
Yeah,
It's
actually, I
long
gotta
and
get some
sugar.
donuts, but I actually
Yeah.
run a bread too.
It's
So
closer to cotton candy than a donut. That's what I want to tell them. It's delicious, but
it
it's
is.
closer to cotton candy than it is to a
Those
traditional
brothers know
donut.
how to make a donut. I'll
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
you that
It's
much.
it's just sugar floating in
It must
air.
be the beard. I don't know what's a beard, what it is, but
Yeah, yeah.
but anyway, but even with them, there's this kind of network out here. It's not as strong as it could be, but it's there, where people cooperating with each other, and I was, in fact, my friend Drew, who just came in here because he left his phone here last night, and he left already. We were talking about this last night, and so right, maybe 3 miles away is the woman where I got my bees from this year.
Okay.
So we're talking, this, and I met her at that one of those reenactment things up the road.
Very cool.
So you start to connect with these people. Actually, we also connected with people who are blacksmiths, and actually another one of my friends, the person we get milk from, they sponsored a workshop on their farm over a weekend for kids to learn leather work and blacksmithing.
Yeah.
So my two youngest boys went, and they made these really cool, like pouch you could use for hunting.
Hmm.
And they also made some hooks as blacksmiths,
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
which was cool. I mean, I didn't learn how to do that when
No.
I was
No.
13.
And again, it's
But
right there. The kingdom of God is right there.
yeah,
Again, there could be as a way of measuring growth, economic, gross domestic product and so forth. And to kind of to take it back to John Michael Greer and my preference for the local, you can see a downward trajectory, but like in a bubbling cauldron, one of my favorite, Celtic images, when something's going down, something's coming. And from John Sullivan, my favorite Catholic writer, when the sea's receding, it's breaking on other shores. If you're paying attention to the stock market, folks, eventually we've run off the cliff years ago. I don't know how long, but take your energy out of that and your attention and your love and your heart and place it back in things that are real. Start doing it now because they're growing. Some things are going down in the cauldron, some things are percolating. And that's exactly Ivan Illich, right? He
yep,
was talking about convivial tools. It's almost like saying, sure, it's no problem. God gave you the power to take transportation beyond the level of the bicycle. He goes, but if you have the eyes to see, the bicycle is about the perfect place. You move about 15 miles per hour. All you people who have cars now, even fast cars, and Teslas, whether they're battery or not, electric, it's all irrelevant. People are moving at about 15 miles per hour between the time it takes to go buy your Tesla, to charge it in, to take it to the mechanics, to get a new engine in, a full new engine in a couple of years. You're still moving at about 15 miles per hour. So wouldn't a world with bicycles and more trees and less smog be more pretty? And the whole point I'm trying to make is the kingdom of God is always right there for the taking. And we have wisdom figures that have pointed it to us. And we need to, like your schooling, we need to start enacting this now.
well, and it's also kind of a Chestertonian distributism, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a real one, and not the cosplay version,
Right.
And well, it's when there was I was interviewed by somebody about distributism, and one of the people was like your old school Catholic lefty, Dorothy Day person who's all about the politics and less about, who was probably a never Trumper, probably going to vote for Harris, and I was just like, who cares about the fucking politics? And there's like there was I think it's a song or an album cover by Frank Zappa, and it's "Shut Up and Play Your Guitar."
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm.
So I have kind of a "shut up and play your guitar" attitude toward a lot of those things. Just do something, right? Do something
Yeah.
creative.
Uh-huh.
You know, and what and this is what I have found.
Okay, but let me hold you there. I'm going right back to you. Help people. I'm teaching at a community college. I have a PhD. I'm in so much debt. I am teaching English. I do love English. Um, I've got a mortgage. I love my husband. We're struggling. We're living in an apartment. We can't afford much. What can I do towards the do something?
Learn skills.
Okay.
Whether it's and that's the thing here, and I learned this as a Waldorf teacher because the kids in a Waldorf school learn all these different skills like book binding and
Mhm.
handwork and woodworking, carving,
Yeah.
and knitting. And they learn all these skills, and the thing is, what it does is it bestows on them a type of competence and not only the skills like that, but also music, the exposure to history and learning and stuff. The way it's taught, at least the way it's supposed to be taught in Waldorf school, and what happens is you end up with a person who is competent and not intimidated by the world. And
Right.
so when people who are, suffering from anxieties of modernity, like debt and other things like this, which
Or real.
almost unavoidable.
Mhm.
But to learn how to do real things
Mhm.
and have real conversations about real things, because those are the things that bestow meaning to life, not not even voting. I mean, the things that bestow meaning to life are these the smallest beautiful things, right?
Mhm.
And then for me, it's we're lucky to have, since we've been here, starting to get connected to this network of people I've been talking to you about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
I think
know,
we saw
and
that. Yeah, go ahead.
and it's because you really, then you realize you're kind of doing distributism as much
Mhm.
as you can. It's there. It's probably it's almost you can't. It's probably not there in cities because cities are not conducive to it. But it is in the countryside. It is the countryside is conducive to that kind of networking,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So which is good, and because then you're doing things again at a human scale.
Yep.
And
I see
most
the
of the people
networking
out here
growing
are
more and
trying to
more
do
every
it
year.
outside of the corporatocracy,
Yeah,
right? I mean, you're never we can't totally be out of it,
yeah,
but you can be a lot out of it. We are with especially with our food. We're you know not entirely, but mostly liberated from the corporatocracy.
Mhm.
And other whatever else you can do to do that, to be engaged in the real, to be, to learn, even as people learn mushroom hunting.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Those little tiny things, which don't sound like a big deal, but you have enough of those little tiny things. You don't have to be an expert at everything, but
yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit about this, a little bit about that, right?
I was at Central Tractor early in the summer. And again, so even if we see glimmers of that, I don't know a young person who's not totally interested in it. And their hearts actually say to even talk about it makes them yearn for like a lost childhood because they go, it's not even possible. And yet it is. And you were eloquent on that. But uh, well, I forget what I was going to say previous to that. But it's everybody wants that type of thing. It's certainly here in the rural parts and in the city. My daughter Lucy, for example, she's a Spanish teacher and she's very competent. And I think one of the most important things you said is that it dispels fear and anxiety. If for no other reason, do these things. But she's always taken interest in crafts. And right now, as a teacher, she's starting a side hustle because we've had all these weddings in our family of just producing, like, she's the one who makes these regeneration, and she can do
Okay.
real fancy stuff, right? But she does little signs on fabric for weddings when people come in and say, like, groom's party here, flowers, is interested in that kind of whole scene. And just, it's just kind of a side hustle. But I would say, if I was talking to Lucy, I wouldn't say she's good at business, which I think she's going to be, and she's also a fantastic teacher. I would say she's confident, right? That's the important
Yep.
part. Yeah, she knows who she is. And it's all about that. It's not about survival, right? There's bigger stakes in this game to become more human.
Well, yeah, and that's what I think, I love the prayer and the liturgy, protect us from all anxiety, right?
Yeah.
That because that kind of, I mean, but modernity breeds anxiety,
Yeah.
you know? And but the antidote to that is engagement with the real,
Right.
and it doesn't have to be, a grand project.
That's the whole vector. That's the whole like template I use with my kids. You can see it. We just call it circle line circle. There was once an essay in like Tikkun magazine by this Jewish mystic, Mark Gaffney. He's interesting. I think he's gotten caught up in, I don't know. He's interesting. Ken Wilber knows him well. But the basic idea of circle line circle from the womb, or no, Michael, you would know it well from Barfield, just the threefold schema of participation,
Yeah.
alienation, and final participation. Where we are in culture, according to what you just said, is that a participation is the rad trad thing, right? Going back to the womb, going back to the crowd instead of community, going back to the primus, the primary east, the primary feminine, again, the womb. It's the first part of an orchestral symphony, that original harmony. Alienation is that discord in the harmony. It's teenager. Civilizationally, Steiner would see it. We're in this period now. And instead of going backwards to the Shire, to where, everybody, there's group unity, there's no anxiety, but you're still in the womb. We have to push forward to that higher level, what we're all calling reality. And the food for that, John Zazoulis, the great Eucharistic scholar, the Russian theologian or Greek theologian, would say the Eucharist is the memory of the future, right? For so much of us, the memory, it's the food that is the memory of the future. For so much of us, memory is nostalgia. Christopher Lasch was brilliant on this. Real memory is the Immaculate Conception. It's that food, the memory of childhood that gives you strength, as the Romantic poet said, specifically Coleridge and Wordsworth, the strength to push towards. Use those memories, of eternal glory, and you push forward to reality where Mike Martin is Mike Martin. Because your dad was a farmer doesn't mean you have to be a farmer. You've left the womb. All these themes are the one primary theme. And I say it's like, if you wanted to see it, it's most beautiful and most simplistic. It's there in the great classical musical tradition,
Yeah. And also, in T.S. Eliot,
Sure.
in four quartets, it's basically what he's talking about. And that he evokes, I shouldn't say doesn't even do that, but he upholds tradition in one way, but he does it in the most modernistic poetry ever. Most imaginative. If he were to write today, I'm sure James Wilson would try to make him write more formal verse, but act like a real tradie. But that's the thing. I was talking to just the other day, but this idea of John the Baptist calling Christ out from the future, right?
Well, where does that idea come from? I already love it. It's my favorite idea, but I've never heard of it before. And why haven't I heard of it?
It's in my book. Which one? Transfiguration.
I've read it many times. I did. Yeah. Where is it? All right, I'll look for it.
It's in the chapter on the arts.
Calling Christ out of the future. That's Zazoulis. The Eucharist is the memory of the future. Yeah.
And that's what John the Baptist did. But and I think that's in a way was the seed of mythologies of the wild of God, because in a way John the Baptist is the wild man, right? He's Enkidu, but he calls Christ from the future.
Wow, beautiful image.
In which and a future that is always already happening, right?
Yeah, and that's the eternal present. It's part of the Eckhart Tolle thing. Steiner, in Tolle in Conversation, I think would be able to unearth a more clear rendition of that. But let me also say that, don't you think, when you were mentioning T.S. Eliot, I guess I hadn't seen him that way, that I think Christopher Promick was with this last podcast. He's great. Before you came on, he and I were talking about how I have this sense that wonderful, radical, fermenting people and personalities like Merton, Dorothy Day, Simone Weil, and some others, they got kind of grabbed by a kind of bland form of leftism, right? We can't get at them. Do you think T.S. Eliot has been domesticated by the right?
Yes.
Okay. Who else has been? Ezra Pound?
No, I don't think anybody wants to touch Ezra Pound with the 10.
But he's too good on currency, right? Perishable currency is
there. He is good, though. Yeah. I mean, his anti-Semitism notwithstanding.
I know, but who needs him? We need William Blake, and William Blake's good on basically all things. But Thomas Jude Germanario, who's one of the most pacifistic writers and people I've ever met, he was there with us through COVID. He's great on looking at the anti-Semitism, and he's honest about it. But he almost says that Ezra Pound is totally necessary.
No, I agree, but I think right now nobody's touching him. But in fact, I have been trying to find a copy of the Cantos. I had one a long time. I don't know what happened to it. So I've been at used bookstores lately looking for a copy of the Cantos.
Yeah.
But his book on the Troubadours is fantastic.
Never read it.
It's really superb. And he was the one who straightened out all those. Well, he straightened out T.S. Eliot, right?
Okay. No, tell me.
You didn't know?
No, I didn't know.
I don't know if it was the Wasteland. I think it was the Wasteland that Pound or Eliot showed him a draft of it, and I guess there was a section of the Wasteland where Eliot kept starting lines with, perhaps it is this,
Hmm.
perhaps it is that, and perhaps it is that. And Pound sent it back with marginalia that said, damned perhapsy.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
also the one who told Yeats. I mean, this, and he was young. I mean, he was like 20 years younger than Yeats or something. And he told Yeats, he sounds too old. And Yeats
Wow.
revised all of his poetry.
Wow. Wow.
That's
Wow.
why if you get, I think it's the 1935 edition of
Hmm.
Yeats's complete poetry, or maybe it's the earlier one. It's different than the later complete poetry because he
Yeah.
revised it after he met Ezra Pound.
Yeah. I'm
And he
just
was the
reading
guy,
one second. Yeah.
Ezra Pound, right? His thing, he told it to all those guys, make it new,
Yep.
make it new, which is and this is exactly, this is Christ, this is eschatology. Behold, I make all things new.
Yeah.
That's what poets are supposed to do. You know, it's what artists are supposed to do. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean make it so new that it's incomprehensible to anybody, because if you did that, it wouldn't. Well, Blake was in danger of that, right? When
Yeah.
Blake wrote, people like, who the hell is this guy? But he was so far from the future that it took people, critics, 200 years to catch up to him.
That's my case for Powys too. They're kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But Blake wrote short poetry. Powys wrote thousands of page novels and weird things. But I want to say that my friend Bill Kaufman, we know this name, Edmund Wilson,
Oh, yeah.
maybe America's greatest man of letters and things. But like what you were saying about Pound is so necessary, right? These people who can just say things, engage with the whole tradition. Um, I've just been reading a lot of Edmund Wilson lately, and I think he's going to be huge for me. He just happened to bump in when he moved up to Talcottsville. He became the sage of Talcottsville. He wasn't looking for it, but he met some Iroquois, now the Haudenosaunee. But his humanity was there. And these people, America has theirs apparently in many people, but Edmund Wilson, and I think it's one of these things like Coventry Patmore that scares us behind Victorian name. Edmund Wilson is so dull in one sense.
It's
But
so Protestant.
yeah, 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 yeah. And yet there's something so necessary there. A guy who only died a couple decades ago, who engaged the whole thing and truly American, just saw through the American industrial complex, the military industrial complex at its very beginnings,
Yeah.
defended the Iroquois in the right way, understood their tradition, wasn't looking to be part of any movement or anything. It's just wild that we have these people around us and they're necessary, totally necessary.
Yeah.
And what you say about Jesus, John the Baptist rescuing from the future is one of the most wild things, Michael. Yeah, I got to go back to your
Full
poetry.
of wild things. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
think, I
Tell
mean,
me.
but I think that's, well, that's what I mean, the great art. Well, and even the great politics. We talking about what happened with Bobby Kennedy yesterday. In a way, Bobby Kennedy was calling something from the future,
Mhm.
right? It was a vision. And it's eschatological at the same time.
Yeah,
You know, it's a revelation. I mean, he's calling for a revelation of, an exposure of this is like the book of Revelation, which is both the revelation of the glory of the Lord, but it's also the revelation of the assholes running things,
yeah.
right? The beast that tries to devour Sophia.
Well, put it in conversation with Eugene McCarthy, right? Somebody else who went for a cause heroically, the Vietnam War. He loses, but it began something that got us out of the war. Isn't that maybe the tertium quid that lies closer to my older son, Peter, between this being apocalyptic and this being like a non-starter? Or what do you think? I think it just occurred to me. I think it's a relevant question.
Well, put it this
And
way.
it's all conjecture, obviously.
Well, in Kennedy's case, it's an extreme act of courage.
And so is Eugene McCarthy's, right?
Yeah, and I mean, he's got the Kennedy legacy behind him, and he said,
Mhm.
"Fuck you" to his brothers and sisters, basically.
Yeah.
Who right away? I don't know if you saw this. Right within minutes, I think, of his speech yesterday, they put out some formal announcement with 4 or 5 of them signing it,
Yeah.
denouncing their brother. What a shitty move that was.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it.
But he knew it. If you come out for Trump, there goes.
Who's going to have a shit fit
That's
out
right.
there? Move is Tucker
Thanksgiving is
Carlson.
going to be awkward this year.
Tucker Carlson, that's his highest value. Like, why would you turn away from your brother?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
Takes a lot of guts to do that. Plus, he takes a lot of guts to call out the deep state.
Yeah.
You know, you
Mhm.
have powerful enemies that way.
But again, Eugene McCarthy's similar act of heroism,
Yeah.
it led to the end of the Vietnam War, which is not for nothing, right? It's not necessarily the trumpet call of the new Jerusalem or something,
That's
but
right.
maybe it's a part. I have no idea.
Well, it's and the thing is, you would
He did a
hope
heroic thing. Yeah.
it is a heroic thing, right? And just standing up and being counted in our insane culture is to do a heroic thing.
Yeah.
To say no.
Yeah.
Or to say yes. Like let your yes mean yes and your no mean no.
That's the
Right?
Bartleby the Scrivener thing, right? I prefer not to.
Yeah, but and there and we think about this a lot. Courage is a rare commodity these days.
Yeah.
People are, and you saw this actually. People, I think are still afraid to be canceled.
Oh, totally. I
But
don't think I
that's the
know.
opposite of courage,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So you got to get to the point where you're like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Don't
you think
damn the torpedoes.
what if it did something else, like in the near term? It probably won't happen, and it'll be greatly disappointing. But the idea prior to Kennedy's speech, all of a sudden, I just thought I was just going to throw up. And I don't listen to too much news. I don't read too much. I don't listen to too much on the car radio or anything. But the whole idea of preserving democracy, that phrase coming for the Kamala campaign was
I know.
it had the most visceral reaction in my gut as any phrase I've ever heard in my life. And then all of a sudden, Kennedy attacked that head on. He goes, he came at it from like three different points.
That convention was so bizarre. I mean,
Joy, the whole
Donald
joy.
Trump or joy. That was like that's when joy doesn't mean joy.
Yeah. What's
That was
the
not the
reverse?
vibe I was getting.
Yaj, joy reversed is probably one of the names of Satan.
And
Like
even
Yaj.
John Stewart did a whole bit on that. The other I just
Did he? I hope so.
Did you see it?
No, what did
When
he
he's
say?
talking about how they're trying to trash talk JD Vance for going to Yale.
Uh-huh.
He said, "By guys who went to Yale."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was just absurd. There was so much of that. And the one thing that was really struck me is one of the refrains besides saving our democracy.
If this is going to be the thing I'm thinking of, I'm going to laugh out loud. I can't wait to hear what you say.
If
I
Donald
have
Trump's
one. I have one.
elected, if Donald Trump's elected, he'll put his political opponents in prison.
Oh, yeah. And I have another one, but you're right.
Where did you get that idea? Yeah,
The
Steve
third
Bannon.
one,
I'd like to ask Steve Bannon for commentary, but he's in prison.
Yeah, or other people, right. And again, Kennedy was eloquent on the lawfare approach right away. He identified himself with Donald Trump. They won. The same forces used law to keep me off and to try and keep us in jail, maybe, to keep Donald Trump.
Yeah, and they're also using lawfare to keep Jill Stein off the ballot.
What's her latest story? I probably would vote for her.
Well, she's she's been the Green Party candidate for I don't know how many cycles now.
Yeah.
But they're suing to keep her off the ballot.
Well, yeah, it's just Kennedy called it all out, and he named it in its severity. The other one that I found totally not unconscionable because it's beyond where the faculty of reason gets involved, but the theme of we can't go back, right? And I'm not the first or the 1,000th person to point attention to it. But like Kamala, but it was Kamala was in the previous administration. It's clearly Democrats, but a whole week dedicated to we have to turn the page. It's as if to get away from Republicans or Donald Trump, when for 4 years the same exact cabal was running the show.
I know, and they're going to change all things on day one.
Yeah, we're going to do something
that they haven't changed in 4 years.
Yeah, they're currently running the administration is the thing they're trying to get away from. It's the same leadership, Kamala. And the whole issue of the deep state. Who was running? I'll use permanent Washington. I do think we need to find terms where everybody could maybe agree to start to question. But so without saying who did it, how has and is Joe Biden functioning? Who's making decisions for our government?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
And nobody. And the thing is that this is another thing Kennedy called out. And the press's job is to ask those questions, and they're not asking them.
No,
they're not.
No.
That's when that's why the only place you see these questions raised are in alternative media.
Yeah.
Citizen journalists, or whatever you call it, which I like that because, I mean, even though you might agree or disagree, doesn't matter. The thing is, it takes power away from the monster.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Do you have a few more minutes? I want to ask you about another theme. Like if we named the show, give me a title, and you can do it later. But another theme in Kennedy, because obviously we've come back to his talk. I'm not embarrassed to say it. Again, I realized one thing before I ask you the question is in New York, Kennedy will not be on my ballot, right? So I'll vote for Jill Stein or something, because he said he's not going to be in those states.
She might not be on it either.
Oh, true. But we'll see where that goes. But how about the theme in the talk and your feelings about censorship? They were front and foremost, right? He talked about Facebook flagging content, and the example he used was so barbaric. I forget the example.
Well, we've been censored, Mike.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
I've been censored. I have. So now, so when I used to drop like one on my old blog, and I would drop one on Facebook, for instance.
Yeah.
Maybe in a couple places on Facebook. Within a few hours, I'd get 500 hits.
Yeah.
Now, if I drop something on Facebook, nobody sees it, and I might get, especially if it's my Substack, and it gets no visibility.
Yeah.
Because I was in so much trouble with Facebook, they just squelched my account. Because during COVID, I was talking smack about all their protocols and stuff, and I was right. But it doesn't matter. Even if it didn't matter if I wasn't right, they were my opinions.
Yeah, right.
Right. But they shut it down, and we know for a fact that they shut people down, even small accounts like mine, at bequest of the government.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what we saw. And actually, I just saw something with Joe Rogan, the clip the other day, and he's right. I can't remember who he was talking to. He said, if Elon Musk hadn't bought Twitter, we'd all be fucked because we wouldn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And which is precisely why I got on Twitter even before he bought it.
But how highly do you rank Elon Musk? So we talked about Guido before. I'm not saying he's controlled op, but don't we have to, another theme is Kennedy's speech, but this idea of a third way or the hidden middle or the tertium quid, isn't Elon just kind of a larger force that takes us into transhumanism? I know he stands with this because of his son. But
I think he's complicated.
Yeah.
And
I could be accused of being a perfectionist or something.
No, I mean I think he's a
Not
complicated
myself,
figure,
certainly.
but but I think what does happen, and I talk to Bonnie about this all the time. You'll often see, over the course of events that somebody will come out, like Bobby Kennedy. I saw this about him. So Bobby Kennedy comes out with his candidacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Elon Musk buys Twitter, or what else? Tulsi Gabbard's another one they do it for, or Naomi Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
And they come out, and what almost, in fact, I shouldn't say almost, invariably what happens is right after they start to draw attention, you start to see rumors floating that they're really controlled opposition.
Yeah.
Well, who do you think's spreading those rumors? Who do you think filters I figured this out way back in the Obama administration, when all of a sudden.
But okay, go back. I'm not so sure I saw the ones about Tulsi as controlled up. I see her as they try to paint her as a radical, as they did with Jim Webb 3 elections ago. Or
they always do.
Okay, because Guido would say the same thing in a different way, probably. That I don't know. I can go both ways.
The thing is,
I didn't hear that much of these people.
And here's the thing.
But I trust you. Yeah.
No, they do. And I think, when people are starting to get attention from the public who might be leading them into a different direction.
Yeah.
Immediate. In fact, there was something today, a news story from the Globe and Mail or something like that,
mm-hmm.
about Bobby Kennedy. Some guy he knew in college says, Bobby Kennedy sold me cocaine in college, which would have been funny. 50 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Which, oh yeah, wow. He must be a major dealer by this point.
Yeah. No, I get you.
But they, and the thing is, they flood it, and sometimes those people could be controlled opposition.
Yeah.
But they say about everybody, and I think the point being, I think they want to destabilize the information that's out there, and they want to destabilize our ability to assimilate information.
Yeah.
So, and we know that the
I
CIA
agree with you on that.
infiltrated, Operation Mockingbird, and what they would do, they would, say a journalist in the New York Times in the 1970s would publish 80% true stuff,
Yeah.
maybe 90 or 95. But when the CIA needed a favor, they published some not true stuff.
Yeah.
So how do you just which ones? How can I tell which is true, which is
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
This guy's usually really trustworthy. This must be true too.
That's where Edmund Wilson is so great, because in his time, again, like if we realize this has been going on for so long, like you say about Operation Mockingbird, he's writing for the New Republic, and I don't want to embarrass the New Republic because it's probably seen several ones, but he's writing for them, and you experience all of a sudden, like you wake up and it's another entity running the show. So this is rare, but he's a man of integrity, so he resigns right away.
Yeah.
And that's what people say, like think of NPR, how like all of a sudden, almost overnight, it became a house organ for something. People need to follow these phenomenon, but really sane men of letters, we need to be able to talk about this thing.
Yeah, NPR is a great example where I wouldn't say trusted, but I would at least listen to NPR for the
Oh, trusted for their viewpoint.
But once COVID started, I couldn't listen to them anymore because it was just starting, and in an hour of programming on All Things Considered, you'd have 50 minutes about that was basically COVID propaganda.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck this, I cannot listen to this. But I'm trying to find something. I saw something yesterday, which is actually speaks directly to our conversation here about controlled opposition. Let's go here.
It's the whole thing of controlled op is an interesting thing. We know it's a reality.
And I know it's here. Hold on.
So is the concept of
Here it is.
useful idiot.
I don't know who Chase Geyser is.
I don't either.
But I've shared this thing this morning. He said, I spent months thinking RFK Jr. was a CIA plant because his campaign manager is former CIA. I thought the whole reason he ran was to split the vote and usher in the Democratic candidate. It now appears his entire race was for the purpose of gaining enough influence to ensure a Trump victory against the deep state. I didn't get it. I was wrong. Today, RFK Jr. became the Kennedy they stole from us.
I saw that too. What do you think of that?
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying, is that people were saying this about Bobby Kennedy early on.
Yeah.
And yesterday he just destroyed that narrative, I think.
Oh, great. No, I agree with that. That guy's enthusiasm for the campaign is probably greater than my own, specifically right now because of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I think people say that like all of his campaign fundraisers now are with, and this would give a point to like Guido or somebody we need to have on to disagree with us. But the idea that all of Trump's money right now are coming from hedge fund managers and everything, right? Who is he too deep in bed with, right? Who is he, and so that, but they've always, in my opinion, to give Donald Trump the credit he deserves, they've over exaggerated those, like the urinating on the face of some lady, in Russia and all this stuff, or that he owns things that he doesn't own and things like that. But he's mad as hell. We know that. He's a guy, they use lawfare and everything to come after him. He's mad as hell. But is this controlled op? Like, are they 500 moves ahead of him? Or do you naturally get in bed with some people who come and say, now I want my pound of flesh?
No, I think we saw that because if that was the case, they would have let Trump stay in office.
They would have?
They would have.
Yeah.
If that were the case, they wouldn't have rigged the last election.
Let's say it's two factions within an even worse faction. Right? Like, in the days of the Boston Brahmins and the Texas Oilmen, it wasn't strictly Republican and conservative. I mean, Republican and Democrat. But there can be an idea that they're two horns of the same bird of prey.
Yeah, I understand that. But I think they would, they wouldn't have disrupted him being in office if they could control him like that.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. That's what I think.
But has he, some people are saying he's more co-opted now, with the with what he's had to do in the follow-up to January 6th, which you and I have the same opinion on. And I'm not saying I agree with him. I'm really not. And that's not only to say I feel bad about disagreeing with you, but right now I just don't know what I think.
Well,
And it would be fun to have somebody like Guido on, or
well,
somebody
I don't know
who's,
either, but they
yeah,
did try to kill him.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until he
That's where I
after he
stand right now. Yeah.
well, and it wasn't until after that assassination attempt, which some people also tried to say was an op,
Yeah.
that he called out the White House, that until that point they had not given Bobby Kennedy Secret Service protection,
Hmm.
even though he had requested it multiple times.
Yeah. Right.
Right, and the reason they didn't grant his request is because they want him dead.
Yeah. Could be.
That's there's no
Mhm.
that's it's well, put it this way, maybe they don't want him dead, but if he's dead,
Yeah. No, and
you know what I mean?
I'm open to all that. Really am.
But I
Yeah.
think that's why they wouldn't, and that's
Uh,
I
how would
just
you answer why didn't they? Because they thought they had him controlled by other means and then he went
well,
rogue? It's possible. Again, do you think they were so late in starting the talk? I don't listen to these things, and I did. What I was doing was reading Edmund Wilson as my phone was on, because I think I just got alerted to it by chance. I was inside from gardening, and I saw on a text it was going to be at 2 o'clock, and I think it was like 5 to 2. So I put it on my phone, started listening. Then all of a sudden, he wasn't showing up, but I got more and more interested, and I don't think it started until 50 minutes later at the
yeah,
earliest. And I wonder after what came out with whether there were negotiations going on till the last second about. Yep.
could have been,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but I think to me it's clear anyway that with all the lawfare on Trump and all the bizarre trials, which are just bizarre, they do
Yeah.
not want that guy in the driver's seat.
No, you're right. Right.
I mean, they just don't.
Uh,
Now, for what that reasoning is, I can't say for sure,
yeah.
but I think the argument that the guy is an anti-warmonger. He's the opposite of a warmonger, right? It
Mhm.
didn't start any wars,
Yeah.
and that's not good for BlackRock,
Agreed.
right?
Agreed.
And it's not good for the industrial military complex. Um, and I mean, we come on. I mean, I've said this to students. I don't know how many times over the years. Why is there still war?
Hmm. Oh, it's a big one for me.
There's still war because it's good business.
Yeah.
It's good for business, and
Mhm.
it's a good way to filter taxpayer money into BlackRock or other,
Sure. No,
all
no,
those.
I think it's that dark.
It is that dark, and I think as evil as we think the structure is, it's probably 100 times more evil.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I wonder, so you have people who start doing really well in real estate or something. Then they're so rich, I think they get bored. They get really bored. Like this yacht that went down, that guy had what, 12 staff or 15 people. Um, and it's what we do know is I can state it clearly, friends and family, and anybody who's listening. I never want to live in that world. I don't want to live in the world of like almost one socioeconomic class above me, because
Yeah,
I think it's harder to stay connected to the real. Um, and so, yeah, I think you swim in those waters, and weak personalities, again, I think to understand this world, you need to put the role that power plays more than money, because some people have so much money, they wouldn't know what to do with it, that they
right,
just start getting involved in sick games. And I'm not saying we should be sympathetic to these people, but we need to, like a Christian anarchist will need to um I don't know, we have to be honest, always speak the truth like you do so well. But for my own kids or for students I've had, I try to say, I hope you don't spend all your time going down this labyrinth, and you would agree, even though we're talking about it. Right in the corner where you live, make sure you don't spend too much time on screens.
yeah,
Don't get lost in rabbit holes. And when you go down these rabbit holes, go there with friends. And when you've lost your sense of humor about it, we haven't talked about Donald Trump, funniest guy in America, that you have to be able to keep, once you lose your sense of humor, that's a real tripwire that, this is not for you. And I'm not trying to say this is elite stuff we're doing, because I don't spend much time on it. What we're doing is we saw something on TV and we reacted. What's your
Yeah,
thought?
and well, and yeah, I mean,
And we get back to like national politics. That's
those
where, again, I
worlds,
don't know where I stand.
yeah, geopolitics, and I mean, all I know is we shouldn't have wars all the time.
Mhm.
We shouldn't have censorship all the time, right? We should have clean food and water and air.
That's
Okay?
great. Yeah.
That's that's my baseline right there. Because if you don't have
Yeah.
those things, you can't have the distributism. You can't have to the optimal degree the kinds of engagements with the real that we need to, as a society, to flourish.
Yeah.
And
It's
I,
looking
that's what I think. So in a way, all that stuff is the anti-sociology.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
1 second here. I'm going to see. Um, my hero, I'm not going to be able to call it up, but my hero, Stephen Vizenchi, he just has, I've printed it somewhere in this wild book that saw, again, the Eugene McCarthy phenomenon. He has the seminal essays in a book called The Rules of Caste. And it's very similar to this Bob Kennedy thing. All of a sudden, he risked his whole career by saying uncategorically he's against the Vietnam War, which led to other people it becoming mainstream. But he threw it all the way. He did the next right thing. I think, you and I, we've been talking about that. But Vizenchi himself was so kind of impressed by that he wrote this Fountain Blue Manifesto. But at the end, it's just beautiful language, that we don't need electric toothbrushes. We don't need AI. We
Exactly.
need beautiful parks. We need children and things like that.
Yeah.
Every man a king type of philosophy.
Yeah. And we need children.
Yeah.
And actually, the most horrifying thing of the Democratic Convention was the abortion bus.
Yeah.
Did you catch that?
No.
You didn't catch it. They had
No.
Planned Parenthood. I'm not kidding. This is not a joke. People thought it was a
Uh,
joke. It's not. They had a mobile clinic where they were giving out free abortions and free vasectomies.
wow.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
I remember when they used to give out those fake straw hats and little miniature American flags
Hmm.
at conventions. But here they're giving out abortion pills and vasectomies.
Wow. Well, yeah. I want to tell people in New York State
Free.
to vote against the ERA coming up. It's a referendum on our ballot this fall. It's one of these things in a very democratic state. They use the idea of an equal rights amendment, but inserts age in there and what they can do, with a 12-year-old having the same rights as wow, wow,
Oh my
wow, wow,
God.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's bad
yeah.
news.
Um, so interesting. So Michael Martin, what are you doing when you get off this again? You're going to
Went to the Amish store
that's right.
and what else am I doing?
I'm going to order some chickens today. I want them to grow up when it's darker at night. When I have chicks and it's like, it's light till 10 o'clock, I tend to close my chickens in. Then I just hate it
I
because
didn't.
they don't always, new chicks don't want to mix with the old flock too much. Where to have longer nights is so much easier. So I'm going to get some babes if they're around, or I might order
You
some.
might, yeah. Do they have? They might have them. What I do to acclimate the new chickens to
Yeah,
the,
tell me.
I have like a bigger cage
Okay.
that I'll put out in the chicken yard with the new guys in it,
Yeah.
and I'll just have them there for a day or two with the door shut, and then I'll feed them inside there, and then after a day or usually 2 days, I'll open the door of the cage, so they'll still go back and forth, but then
Uh-huh.
the other chickens are used to them by then.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you just throw them in there, the other chickens will beat the hell out of them.
Yeah, I could get them. I could get so they wouldn't beat the hell out of them, but it was getting them into their evening kind of small
But
coop.
they get trained, and the other
They
ones
do.
train them.
Yeah. No, I've seen it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not super pretty, but the longer nights I do think would make it easier. Don't you agree?
Maybe. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Because they smell each other, I think, all at night, and they or their eyes are so bad. So instead of getting those blinders on them, they get really
Yeah,
used
but
to each other.
you'd have to make sure you let them out right at the crack of dawn then.
Oh, sure.
Otherwise it's like a prison drama.
No, and I would do the nights in addition to what you're saying. I tend to put them in proximity to each other for a few days,
Yeah.
and then they actually sleep, the little babies, and they have a heart trap. I just kind of close them in there, then I open it in the morning. Well,
Yeah. So what else am I doing? I think I'm almost caught up on stuff. We have our last crops I've put in. I gotta make sure they stay watered.
Kale,
No,
peas.
kale. I love kale because you put it in spring, it lasts till
It
winter.
does. Yeah. But you
But I
could still
just
be
planted
planting it. Spinach.
some radishes, and I think we
Okay.
have some spinach and stuff out there, which is kind of interesting. Has it been cool there?
Yeah, for the last week or so.
The evenings, it's been great. But as soon as it starts to get cold, I don't care where I go out here, all the guys start talking about deer hunting.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was buying feed from the Amish a couple days. Yeah, they go, yeah. Got any plans for the season yet?
Yeah.
So it's like I said, there's a community out here.
Yeah. In that book that one of my friends who listened to the podcast, Steve Sprecher, a soil scientist, you recommended a book from an English lady who's still alive on the English kind of seasons during the liturgical year.
Uh,
Harvest.
Winters in the something.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
started that, and it's really great. What she helps me do is that, for years we homeschooled and our kids ended up in public schools at some time or another. We just never took school seriously. But she has autumn in those ancient festivals. Autumn things, that whole feeling of Thanksgiving starts now, right?
yeah.
That because of the school calendar, it dominates everything. We, at least in New York State, we don't really think of autumn until all the kids are in school and things like that. But, she gives you a really robust way to take in this kind of bittersweet time of year,
It is, yeah. But
where
it's also,
football dominates the consciousness of people too.
but it's the harvest, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
storing things up for the winter,
yeah.
and that's why which feast we don't observe in this country, Lammas,
Yeah.
right? Which is the loaf mass, which is
Mhm,
the first of August, right before the Transfiguration.
mhm.
Um, it's an important feast because that was when the first bread was made from
Yeah.
that year's wheat,
Mhm.
right? Which is, I mean, you can't get any more Eucharistic than that,
No, no, no.
and the work of human hands, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Very, very cool.
Okay.
Michael Martin, it was great catching up with you.
Good to see
Hopefully
you,
we'll
bro.
continue. We'll have a guest on next week, and if we don't, let you and I do this, but we'll start lining up our guests for the fall.
All right, now I'm gonna go get a donut.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay.
Enjoy. Take it easy, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Let's see.